Good morning, everybody. Today we are solving equations, but this time our equations are going to have our variables on both sides. So we're going to have letters on both sides of our equation. Now, when we solve these, we have to follow a certain pattern. The first thing we're going to do, number one, the first step is to distribute. So we're looking for parentheses when we distribute. Now, I don't see any parentheses for this one, so I am not going to distribute for this point. The second step is to combine. So I'm looking for the same letters. Well, I see an A here and an A here, so I can combine these two. I can only combine on one side of the equal sign. If I have more on the other side, I can combine those two. But for right now, I only have 5A plus 2A, which gives me 7A. The minus 3 comes down, equals 4A plus 9. I can't combine anything else, so now I need to go to my third step. My third step is to get the variable or the letter on one side. Now, I'm going to pick which side I want, and I think I want my variable on the left side, and I'll put a constant side over here. So those numbers without the variables I'll put on this side. Now how I'm going to move it is I'm going to do the same thing as I would move any other number. I would do the opposite of what we have. So I'm going to move this 4A over to the other side. How I do that is a positive 4A, so I'm going to subtract it. I'm going to do the opposite. Subtract 4A from both sides. So what I get then is 7A minus 4A, which gives me 3A, minus 3 equals 9. Because 4A minus 4A cancels out because it gives me 0. Now, I'm going to do my fourth step, which is to undo, or do the opposite of addition and subtraction. I have a subtraction sign, so I can undo that by adding 3 to both sides. So I get 3A, those cancel out, equals 9 plus 3, which is 12. Now my last step is to undo multiplication or division. What I have here is multiplication, so I'm going to undo that by dividing. And I get A equals 12 divided by 3, which is 4. So A equals 4. If I go over to this problem, I have to look and see if I can do my first step, which is distribute. I see parentheses and a number outside, so I know I can distribute. So if I draw my box, I get 6 on the outside, 7 minus 2p on top. And over here I can also distribute. I have 3 times 5p minus 4. So 6 times 7, that gives me 42. 6 times negative 2p gives me negative 12p. 3 times 5p gives me 15p. And 3 times negative 4 gives me negative 12. So I have 42 minus 12p equals 15p minus 12. Second, I'm looking to see if I can combine. I have nothing I can combine. So now I'm going to get the variable on one side. So I'm going to make a variable side and a constant side. Now it doesn't matter which side I make. You can do either. Here I'm going to subtract 15p to get my variable to my variable side. Negative 12p minus 15p gives me negative 27p. So 42 minus 27p gives me negative 12. Now I'm going to undo addition or subtraction. Here I have addition because this is positive. So I'm going to subtract 42. I have negative 27p equals negative 12 minus 42, which is negative 54. Divide by negative 27. So p equals positive 2. Two negatives make a positive. 54 divided by 27 is 2. Alright, now we're going to work with a little bit of fractions. So I'm going to distribute and get 5n, 5 times n, and 5 times 2 gives me 5n. 5 times 2 gives me 10 equals 3/5 times 5 and 3/5 times 10n. 3/5 times 5, that's going to give me 3, plus 3/5 times 10n gives me 6n. Okay, now I'm looking to see if I can combine, and I can't. So now I'm going to get my variables to one side. Let's make this my variable side and this my constant side. So I'm going to subtract 6n to get my variables on one side. I get negative 1n plus 10 equals 3. Oh, not 3, 7, 3. Now subtract 10 to get my constants on the constant side. And I get negative 1n equals negative 7. Now, to get n by itself, I need to divide by negative 1. N equals negative 7 divided by negative 1. Two negatives make a positive. So n equals 7. Now over here I can distribute, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 10 plus 2 times 2a gives me 4a. 2 times 1 is going to give me 2 equals 7a minus 3. Now I'm looking to see if I can combine. On this side I have two constants, so I can combine those. 10 plus 2 gives me 12 plus 4a equals 7a minus 3. I'm going to make a variable in constant side. This time I'm going to make this my constant side and this my variable side. So what I'm going to do is subtract 4a from both sides to get my variables on my variable side. So I get 12 equals 7a minus 4a, which is 3a, minus 3, or not plus 3, minus 3. Okay, now I'm going to add 3 to get my constants on one side. I get 15 equals 3a divide by 3 on both sides. A equals 15 divided by 3, which is 5. Okay, moving on. We're going to learn something a little bit different today. We are going to learn how different equations can have different answers. So equations can have one solution, so that's like saying x equals 3. That means only 3 will work in that equation. Equations can have no solution, so if I get something that says maybe 1 equals 3, I know that 1 can't equal 3, so I know that that's no solution. Or they can have a solution of all real numbers. If I have an equation with all real numbers as a solution, I have what's called an identity. That's like saying 3 equals 3. So an identity is an equation that is true for all values of the variable. The solution of an identity is all real numbers. So I can put any single number I want to into that equation, and I would get the same answer. So what we got to do with these equations now is figure out if these equations have one solution, no solution, or they are an identity and have all real numbers as a solution. So again, we have variables on both sides. We need to do our first step, which is to distribute, but we don't have any parentheses, so we can't distribute. Then we go to combine. Negative 15c plus 7c gives us a negative 8c plus 1 equals 3 minus 8c. Okay, so now we need to get our variables and our variables on one side and our constants on one side. So I'm going to put my variables here and my constants here. So to get my variables on one side, I need to do the opposite of negative 8c and add 8c. If I add 8c to this side, this cancels out because that's 0, and negative 8c plus 8c also cancels out because that's 0 as well. So what I'm left with is 1 equals 3. Now I know that 1 doesn't equal 3 because they're not the same number. So what that means is I have no solution. So there is no solution to this equation. So my answer then, my solution to this equation is that there's no solution. If I were to go over here, I'm going to distribute because I see parentheses. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2 here. So I get 6g. 2 times 2 gives me 4. Equals 1/2 times 12g. So half of 12 is 6g. And 1/2 of 8. Half of 8 is 4. So I have 6g plus 4 equals 6g plus 4. Now some of you may have already noticed something a little bit strange about this one. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to get my variables on one side and my constants on the other. So I'm going to subtract 6g and subtract 6g. Six g minus 6g is 0, so that cancels out. 6g minus 6g is 0, so that cancels out. What I have left now is 4 equals 4. So if 4 equals 4, which we know is to be true, if we have a number equal to the same number, we know that this one is an identity. So that means that any number that I can put in for g would work in this equation. So I have an identity. Let's try some more. Here I have 6.2h plus 5 minus 1.4h equals 8h plus 5. So I gotta combine them. 6.2h minus 1.4h gives me 4.8h plus 5 equals 4.8h plus 5. Now, if I make a variable side and a constant side, subtract 4.8h from both sides, that cancels out, so does this. I get 5 equals 5. Now if I have a number equal to the same number, I know I have an identity. All real numbers would answer this equation. Here I have 16a equals 22 plus 5a. So I'm going to solve this like I would any other problem. I'm going to make a variable side and a constant side. Subtract 5a from the constant side to get it to the variable side. So I get 16a minus 5a, which is 11a, equals 22. Divide by 11, and I get a equals 2. So what this means is that only one thing, only 2, can work for this equation. So I have one solution. Now moving on to our last equation, or our last word problem. It says for $360, a rock climbing gym offers a yearly membership where members can climb as many days as they want and pay $4 per day for equipment rental. Non-members pay $10 per day to use the gym and $6 a day for equipment rental. So we need to write an equation to find the total number of visits, after which the total cost for a member and the total cost for a non-member are the same. Then we're going to solve the equation. So we know that a member pays $360 a year. So this is going to be our member side. $360 plus every day that they go, they pay $4 per day for equipment. So this is our member side. Our non-member side, they pay $10 per day and $6 a day for equipment rental. So they're adding $6 every day that they go. So now we have a member side and a non-member side. So we need to figure out which number is going to be equal for both non-members and members. So what we got to do is combine our like terms, because that's the first thing we see to do. And we get 16d, or 6 for 16 days. Here we have 360 plus 4 days. We got to subtract the 4 days to get our variables on one side. So we get 360 equals 12 minus 4, or 16 minus 4, which gives me 12b. Divide by 12. And D equals 30. So after 30 days, both the member and the non-member are paying the same amount to go to this rock climbing gym.